Before I start this video, I want to be 100% clear that some information given in this video may be inaccurate, but I will try my best to get the facts that I do know, but since this is currently outgoing, I may or may not be correct. So before you start leaving comments calling my video premature and inaccurate in all capital letters, and whatever else you would like to say, please understand that I'm making this with my speculations and whatever else. Some of this information may have been told by other YouTubers or whatnot. Thank you for listening to this important announcement. Now let's get to the video, shall we? Do you know what this is called? Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we call an automatic switch. There are control points where these switches can be altered, so it will make sure trains go through smoothly. These switches are also used in crossovers too, and as a Union Pacific fan, I've seen plenty of crossovers with automatic switches. I mean, there's one right here. Plus, these automatic switches are a lot less likely to be tampered with, unless you're a very careless dispatcher, that is. And now we get to the manual competitor. These switches cannot be controlled by dispatchers, but in fact, controlled by crews. But how? Besides the usual switch, there are also 6 key elements to make sure that the tracks move as according to plan. Even by dispatcher needs, that's true too. In the laws of the railroad, all of these switches need to be equipped with a padlock. They need padlocks for one reason: to make sure people do not tamper with switches. Very unfortunately, these switches are still around. Union Pacific still has them, though not very many though. The majority of switches have been replaced with these. This is due to positive train control elements being put in. This makes switching tracks easier for crews. CSX, NS, CP, KC, CN still have these too. But one of the more bigger companies that actually still have these switches is none other than Burlington Northern Santa Fe, or BNSF, if you will. Very unfortunately, this has happened to BNSF plenty of times before. I mean, look at the Cactus train collision, for example. But objectively, not every train accident is their fault. In fact, there are a couple of factors that could lead to something bad. Faulty signaling, which caused the Clapham Junction train collision of 1988. That's not a fallen tree! Fallen trees. Scenarios like this are unlikely, but they still happen every now and then. Prime example of that happening was on the last run of the Kentucky Cardinal. If you want to hear more about the Kentucky Cardinal, go watch Amtrak Guy 365's video on the Kentucky Cardinal. Misaligned switches from other crews. Obviously. I already mentioned one anyway. Sometimes even broken tracks are a reason for that happening. There's a prime example of a train derailment like this. Go watch if you're interested. And obviously the most common crashes. All because of disobeying railroad crossing signals. Speaking of which, I'm going to be revisiting the old TRE crashes from 2018. One of which includes this bad boy here. Back to the topic at hand. Though it is absolutely very rare to see a manual switch be tampered with. Not by crews, but by a stupid deep breaths, but by a child nuisance. Unfortunately for BNSF, there was going to be a repeat offense. This time by a 17-year-old teenager. Or is it?
The 17-year-old is accused of causing a train derailment in Bennett earlier this year. They think he tampered with a switch and moved it to the wrong position on April 21st. 2 locomotives and 5 rail cars derailed, causing more than $300,000 in damage. The switch is supposed to be secured with a padlock, but the lock was missing. Investigators say the boy then recorded the derailment on his cell phone. He could be charged with felony criminal mischief.
Before the chaos ensued, let me tell you how it all happened to begin with, starting with one train. This is the story of the BNSF Bennett, Nebraska train sabotage, revisited. Monday, April 22nd, 2024. This is the town of Bennett, Nebraska. Population 1,083, according to a 2022 Google log. It's a small town located about 17 miles away from the state capital of Lincoln, Nebraska. It's a nice and chill day. A little cold, but 64 degrees high. Birds are chirping, trees are rustling, no big disturbances in the force. Unfortunately for Bennett, Nebraska, things were going to change really soon. Meanwhile, on the BNSF Nebraska City subdivision, a BNSF coal train heading back to where it originated from was leaving Nebraska City, as its last destination was located in the Nebraska City power plant. The BNSF crew was instructed to drop off an empty and defective coal car. Engine numbers unknown. The train passed Monroe Street, went onto the single track with the manual switch, dropped off the coal car, which was now sitting next to the grain elevator, realigned the switch back to the main, and after confirming with dispatcher, they were able to leave. Unfortunately, the switch would be a critical role later. The area where the grain elevator was in dark signal territory, which means there were no signals in the area, and for BNSF especially, filing out track warrants. On the other end, there was another train heading the opposite direction, heading for the Nebraska City power plant. This train consisted of 2 engines on the front and 3 engines on the back, with BNSF ES44AC 6216 in the lead, and BNSF SD70 ACE 8505 trailing, and 3 distributed power units, ES44AC 6367, followed by 2 SD70 ACEs 9277 and 9375. Between the 5 engines was a bunch of fully loaded coal cars. But what they did not know was they were going to be in for trouble, as their train would never make it to its destination. Around 6 p.m., the train approaches Bennett, Nebraska. But what they did not know was that they were in for a shocker, as the train somehow ended up switching onto the siding track where the coal car was literally sitting on, while the engineer was still honking his horn inside of the train. What they did not know was there was an object in front of them, and with a crash, the train ends up hitting the coal car, pushing the coal car and derailing 2 engines and 5 coal cars from behind. After the accident, silence rang in the background. Thankfully, nobody was harmed or killed in this little mini accident. A railfan who was in the area at the time ran to the scene of the crash to see if the engineer and conductor were okay, but he wasn't the only one. Eventually, emergency services came along, and so did the BNSF police, in which the police asked the railfan what happened. Little did anybody know, the story he was going to be telling the police was literally a fabricated lie to make him look like a victim. More on that topic later. People were asking, what happened? What caused this train bound for the power plant to derail? During the later evening, investigation to what caused the derailment launched by local and BNSF police. But eventually, on the following day, April 23rd, the engines were hoisted up and re-railed onto the tracks. But while that was happening, 2 rescue engines also came along, with BNSF ET44 3701 and BNSF ES44 DC 7857 coming in to hoist the 2 engines and the derailed coal cars that were re-railed. Though despite the fact that the 2 engines derailed, they did not seem to sustain significant damage. At the very best, microscopic damage has occurred to these 2 engines, 8505 and 6216. On the other hand, the coal car that remained on the rib track even after the accident sustained some significant knuckle damage, as you can see here, though the coal car now is more defective than it was to begin with. However, the story is not in fact over. Exactly 3 months later, news article after news article after news article, and several news stations started talking about it, this time putting the kid in a very, very negative light.
BNSF train derailed near Bennett, and a viewer caught the whole thing on camera and sent it in to us. Now, a search warrant is detailing how the company's railway police are accusing the person who recorded the video of also pulling a rail switch, ultimately causing that derailment. The lead investigator says the accused 17-year-old walked up during the investigation and asked what happened, later telling the investigators it was, quote, obvious that the switch had been pulled, and then showed the investigator the video you're seeing now. Railway police believe that security cameras in the area showed the teen not only driving up to the scene, but also setting up a camera minutes before the derailment. Railway police took 2 recording devices from the teen's home.
The Lancaster County teen accused of intentionally causing this train derailment out in Bennett. The 17-year-old even sent this video to 1011 afterwards. You see there some of those cars veering off of the tracks. It happened at the crossing at Highway 43 back on April 22nd. A criminal complaint says that between the rail itself and the train engines and cars, about $350,000 worth of damage was done. That teen has now been charged with 2 felony counts of criminal mischief, but he is not in custody at the moment. Attorneys have filed a motion to move his case to county court and to try him as an adult.
It took them only 3 months to realize that investigators were thinking of a second theory. that the teen deliberately did this for internet clout, as speculation circulated that security cameras in the area caught him. But how exactly would he flip the switch? There's really one simple explanation for this. The switch is not located near Monroe Street, but in fact it's near Garden Street, which is the gateless crossing not too far away from the grain elevator. The very same crossing where Capital City Rail Productions, the kid responsible, caught the rescue train at. Though no security camera footage has been found yet, the kid received 2 charges for felony criminal mischief, but as news suggests, pending custody. The wreck in total costed $350,000. Though uncertain, 8505 and 6216 should be fully repaired eventually and returned to service, but knowing a lot of these big locomotives, it may take a month or 2 for that to happen. Fortunately for BNSF 6367, 9277, and 9375, all 3 engines were undamaged and continue to run in service as of today. Though he has been charged but not put in jail, lots of people had something to talk about relating to this incident.
Fan recorded of was caused by the Railfanner one setting a switch into a siding, causing the train to derail.
Intentionally, like I said, sabotaged a train and then filmed it. So the reason why BNSF caught him was that they found on a security camera him walking toward the switch, or someone matching his description, walking toward the switch that was unlocked. He threw the switch, walked back, then apparently he waited for the next train to come, which was the 6216, and started rolling, and then he filmed the train as it derailed and wrecked. That gives us rail fans a really bad rap because of what these 2 people did over the past 3 years. This has made all of us look bad, and even the people who genuinely like trains, like for example my granduncle, my dad's uncle, my aunt's uncle, but still without permission and very illegal to do. But now from what happened today or 2 months ago and then what was announced today makes Sebastian look like a saint.
I've seen a few trains. I filmed them from a safe distance, so I'm in the clear. What's this kid doing? Well, my guess is a brain-rotted audience must have praised him for doing it or whatever.
Once in a while, though, you're lucky enough to catch a derailment on camera. It's a very rare occurrence to like actually catch something happening in real time like that, but it can happen. And I actually did one time. I haven't uploaded the whole clip. I'll have to get to that in the near future. Some kid by the name of Capital City Rail Productions, a small train channel with about, I think, 475 subs as of recording, was lucky enough to catch the train derailing like as it happened in real time, which is pretty crazy. The 17-year-old kid filming approached the guys investigating with BNSF and asked them what happened. And then in the news article, it says that he said, quote,
"Obviously the switch was flipped the wrong way."
like, bro.
This kid comes along, and he was fortunate enough to catch a train derailing on camera. Isn't that something? He just happened to be right where the train derailed at that exact moment in that exact place. Too much of a coincidence for you? Yeah, well, me too. 2 locomotives and 5 cars derailed, which amounted to, oh, you know, only $350,000 in damage.
About Capital City Rail Productions, who, if you haven't heard of by now, has intentionally derailed a BNSF Arbor coal train by misaligning a switch and setting it into a siding. Basically what happens is that a car pulls into a parking lot, an individual gets out of that car and runs over to a switch, which is out of view of the camera. Then it shows the individual running back to that car and speeding away. A few minutes later, on a different security camera, it shows that same exact car and the same exact individual getting out, but this time getting tripoded on recording equipment. Now, if you put 2 and 2 together, it's obvious that Capital City Rail Productions switched the track just so that he could catch it on video and become everyone's hero.
Look, I wouldn't be doing myself justice if I didn't have any words to say on the matter, but But I got something to say, and I'm going to go ahead and say it in this video since I already documented like the entire thing anyway. If your thought process is, I'm gonna just ruin someone else's day, just say it and move on. But don't physically do it. $350,000 isn't a pretty penny. It's 50 pretty pennies if anything. So if I've learned anything from what you've done, it's the no trespassing signs serve a purpose, and you should have never ever touched that switch, regardless if there was a padlock or not. You basically just made Sebastian DeYoung look like an angel compared to what you've done. But compared to both of you, Shawn B is still even worse. I mean, the guy was harassing on Union Pacific for how long? And then these two repeat numbskulls just come in and just mess with switches, and one causes a train crash as bad as this. Which is an understatement to say the least, meaning that he caused very, very minor damage to a train. Ridiculous! Oh, you thought I was done? Oh wait, no, there's more. As if anything would get worse for this guy, more popular YouTubers are also reviewing this, including Moist Critical and August the Duck. Sebastian DeYoung never got that kind of attention, and this is what happens in 2024. Yeah, I'm sorry, Capital City Rails, but you're cooked.
A very interesting strategy here. This sounds like some kind of lame plot that Cobra Commander would have cooked up to lure out the G.I. Joe, except here it's just used for views. There's so many things to unpack here, but one thing I'm very curious about is where he planned to go from here. Like, let's say he did get a huge audience for derailing the train. Does he just keep amping up the stakes? Like, the mischief to keep the audience hooked here. It seems like this is a one-and-done thing, unless he was just going to be some kind of, like, serial train derailer.
The craziest thing about this is he's getting more subscribes just from doing this stupid crap. Thanks for making me well aware, 101 Moose fan. North Cali Railroading 2023 also had a very convincing point. What he did should have not been done in the first place. That crash would have been avoidable. I mean, he literally just said it himself. You'd think, okay, a crazy man who has mental problems derails a train because he can't think straight, but a railfan derailing a train is flat out crazy. What's more crazy is more people are still addressing this today, even now. And as if he had any more crazy shenanigans under his belt, he literally predicted his literal downfall. Exactly 4 years ago now. Stuff like this is not supposed to happen. And to say there was no lock does not excuse the fact that he could have also unlocked it himself. The past is the past. Security cameras have caught him red-handed, and now he knows what he's up to. He's done. If there is any lessons learned from this, there's 4 of them. Number 1, no manipulating train switches or any other equipment. Number 2, simply no trespassing. Look, to be fair, I've had my fair share of being too close, and I've had one police car drive by and told me to back up a bit. If all it takes is one simple police drive-by to tell you to not trespass, then that's about as simple as it's gonna be. A few years ago, for me, I went from this to this. Simply time and being over 100 feet away from the crossing. Number 3, simply no lying to cops, like this piece of shit did. And number 4, do not intentionally do things like this for clout. This just makes you a heartless asshole, a piece of shit individual in general, a nuisance to society, and most importantly, gives railroaders more of a reason to not let you be comfortable doing what you do best in. It's disgusting behavior. Titles like this and fabricated lies to hide the truth. Fucking ridiculous! This pretty much just sums up the story and what came after it. An interesting recommendation is using combination locks on the switches, so we never see a repeat like this in the near future. But this little train derailment marks the very first train derailment with a hint of controversy and a lot of foreshadowing.
Coincidence? I think not! This little rat is guilty!
Simply stop breathing.
Holy sh**.